Welcome to Ponchatoula Live, the show where we make it easy for you to connect with the people of Ponchatoula. I'm your host, Parker Layrisson, and today we've got a phenomenal guest. This is one of the first returning guests that we've had on the show. I think he's the second. As I recall, Sparky Wells did a two-part interview, but that's just because we didn't finish the first interview. This is, I think, the first time that one of our former guests has agreed to come back on the show. Months after his first interview to talk about what's going on in the community. And I'm really excited about that. It's Dr. David Cranford. Now, if you saw Dr. Cranford's interview last time, you will remember that he is the pastor of First Baptist Church of Ponchatoula. He's a dynamic speaker, a family man. This is somebody you see out in the community on the soccer fields and football fields and, taking his kids fishing and very active in addition to his duties as a minister. And his wife is a local teacher. She's beloved, and my kids love seeing her at Sunday school. It's just a great family. So with no further ado, Dr. Cranford, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me back. And I don't know, is this the second time around? Is this when you start interrogating me or maybe something like that?
The first time was a setup. This is the hardball. This was all a long con, by me. As you know, I'm a Catholic boy that married a Baptist, and I now spend my Sundays, watching you preach. And yeah, the first one was all a big setup so I could get you on here and interrogate you.
Did Father McDuffie put you up to that?
I was going to say Father McDuffie put me up to that, but of course you know better because you and Father McDuffie, as well as other local ministers, are now working together these days. So one of the things I'm going to ask you about later is your faith sharing program that you and Father McDuffie and Pastor Coleman and so many others are active in. But yeah, it is kind of neat because when I grew up, and certainly when my dad went to St. Joe a generation before me, he tells me, and even back to my grandmother's, I think we had a less than friendly rivalry at times between Catholics and Baptists, and it's good to see that's chilled out a little bit and thawed, here in recent times. So before we dig into the business of the church, the exciting things that you have going on there, why don't we refresh people that watched last time or inform people that have never heard you before by just telling people a little bit about yourself and who you are and kind of where you come from.
Sure. Thanks so much, Parker. I'm a South Louisiana boy, born and raised in Slidell, as I called it, and as natives call it Slumdale. Back in the day, I'm old enough to say that, back in the day, there weren't very many people that were actually born in Slidell. Everybody sort of moved there. But I was born there, and I have that distinction, and grew up in South Louisiana and went to school in South Louisiana, graduated from Slidell High School and University of New Orleans, then went over to Gentilly Boulevard for seminary at New Orleans Seminary, then went to Central Louisiana in the Pineville area at Tioga First Baptist, where I was, that was my first full-time pastorate. Met my wife there. And stayed there for 15 years and then came to Ponchatoula, and they haven't, about half the people are always happy to see you come. The other half of the people in the church are happy to see you go. But so far, they haven't gotten me out.
My dad was a sheriff, and it was similar. Politicians, preachers, you can't satisfy all the people all the time.
That's right.
So if you've got half of them looking to run you out of town, that means you're doing, right, as long as it's the right half that's on you.
Right.
Well, tell me this: what's a day in the life like for a pastor of a church? Because Ponchatoula is a growing community. Tangipahoa Parish is a fast-growing community. And, your church is one of the largest in the area. So I'm sure that it's a very busy job. I have no idea, what it's like. But would you share with us kind of, what do you do as pastor of the church?
Sure, absolutely. The standard joke is that preachers only work on Wednesdays and Sundays. But that's not true. We do work during the week as well. First Baptist Ponchatoula is blessed with a staff of people that is here during the week. And so we start out every week on Monday with staff meeting, and we meet together as a staff and talk about, the good things that happened the day before. And we look at the week and examine what's coming up in the week and try to keep everybody on the same page as much as possible. And then, during the week, we're also trying to be out where the people are, trying to be out visiting folks. That for me, that means I serve as a volunteer chaplain at North Oaks. And so I'm in the hospital quite often visiting folks that are sick there. And, I don't want to say I enjoy doing that, but I do enjoy hopefully being an encouragement to people that are sick and in the hospital. Of course, we have midweek services, and I do a Bible study during our Wednesday night service. And so I have to find time to study and prepare for the things that I do in teaching and preaching, and spend a lot of time doing that during the week. I want to communicate God's word as effectively and efficiently as I can. I always tell people I want to kind of throw the ball over the plate. And it's
Right.
kind of hard sometimes to get the ball over the plate. And so you have to kind of know your people and know how they hear and how they listen in order to know what to say. And so I spend a lot of time doing that. I could always spend more time doing that. Then, of course, every day I try to maintain quiet time with the Lord and prayer and praying for people, praying for the church, and reading God's word, devotionally for me too.
Right.
I don't just want to study and prepare for sermons, but also want to allow God to speak to me personally and lead me. I got 3 kids, 3 great kids, wonderful kids that are such a blessing. My oldest is in nursing school at Southeastern. I have my second boy is a senior this year at Ponchatoula High School, and I have a sophomore at Ponchatoula High School too. So there's a good bit of interaction there too. Kind of keeps you busy.
That's a busy schedule. Wow. just the parenting side of having kids that age and being in all the different ballparks and activities and wow, what's it say about your oldest child to go into nursing coming off the heel of this pandemic? That's really brave choice. So I commend your family on that, and thank y'all for sending somebody there into the fire of that. Tell us a little bit about how you got started in the ministry, because you mentioned growing up in Slidell, South Louisiana, not exactly the Bible Belt of a place like where your wife grew up, Tioga or Alabama or Arkansas or Mississippi. It's not, as I understand it. Slidell's not Baptist country. So how did you find this calling into the ministry at such a young age? And if you would just share with us a little bit about what led you on that path.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was born and raised in Slidell, as I said. However, both my parents were born and raised in Mississippi, and so there's
That
sort of
explains
my Mississippi roots and my Baptist roots come from both my mother and my father. And I grew up I was at First Baptist Slidell 9 months before I was born, like so many of us. I
right.
was there in church before I was born, and so I grew up at First Baptist Church of Slidell. Was there for the vast majority of my life, and just had great pastors and great leaders. Jimmy Baham was one of them from here in Ponchatoula, and served as a longtime minister of music at First Baptist Slidell.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really felt the call when I was about 18 years of age, and didn't ignore that. Didn't ignore it for very long. Tried to ignore it maybe, and surrendered, and was able. I'm so thankful that I surrendered at a young age, because I was, able to sort of guide my studies in that direction from the outset in after high school. So
right.
That's the short version.
Well, let me ask a follow up on that for other young people or people of any age really who might feel something like that coming on, but maybe don't have the background you had in a Christian home and growing up in church like you did. If someone is starting to feel or even just question their faith, what advice would you give to someone who's not yet in church but is feeling a call in there, or curiosity?
Sure.
How could you educate people in that process a little bit about maybe what they could and should do next?
Well, I think what I would advise anyone in that situation to do is to reach out to someone, who is in that position. If you have a Baptist bent, then reach out to me or some other Baptist pastor who has gone through this experience, and talk to them. Many people are surprised to find and learn that pastors are real people, and we'll sit down and talk with you during the week, and you can come and sit in my office, and we'll drink coffee, and we'll talk about normal, regular, everyday things, and then we'll also talk about your spiritual concerns, your spiritual questions. If you have a Catholic bent, then go see Father McDuffie and talk to him,
Right.
and see what he has to say. One of the things that was always said to me is, if you can do anything else and be happy, then do something else. And I think that's just a reflection
Yeah.
of,
Great
to stay
advice.
in this, to retire as a pastor,
Hmm.
to retire as a minister. You really do need to have that strong sense of call. This is what God has called me to do,
Right.
because it's not always easy. I don't think any job is easy today, but it's certainly not easy to lead and guide people spiritually. It's kind of like pushing a string sometimes.
Yeah. No, you're right. I
And
mean,
so,
you don't, you're too humble to say any job's easy, but some are harder than others. Let's be honest. We alluded to your child who's going to be a nurse. That's a job in any era that's tougher than most. In
mhm,
wartime or famine or pandemic, it's much harder. Being a police officer, being a school teacher. I mean, they're things
right.
that are, quite frankly, a lot tougher than being a lazy lawyer like myself. So, and you're in one of those, but you clearly love it. You felt the calling at a young age, and here you are, still a young man, but less young. Let's put it that way. What are some things about the job that you really love? I know every day is not, apple pie and banana splits, but what is it that you really love about your job?
Well, I would say the first thing is, what you talked about a moment ago: seeing people come to a faith, seeing people come to a saving faith in the Lord. That's the cream of the job. It really is, to see people come to a knowledge of the Lord, and to be able to, maybe have some part in that, to be able to have some opportunity to lead people in that direction, and then maybe baptize some of them, even. That is the absolute best. I love God's word. I love the Bible. I love studying the Bible. And on my introvert side, which I do have, I could sit in a room all day and just study God's word right by myself.
Mhm.
That's not always extremely productive, not helpful to others, perhaps, but I'm passionate about that. I love that. And so that's a great thing for me, to be able to get to do that, on a weekly basis, and then stand up on
Right.
Sunday and Wednesday and try to, tell people some of the things that I've discovered, and some of the things that God has shown me, is a great privilege. And I'm not sure that it's something that I should be paid for, but don't tell anybody in the church that, because I do I do like my paycheck. So,
Well, let's flip the coin and talk about challenges, because in a moment we're gonna go into plans and expansions and all these great things that are happening with the church. But I know it can be really challenging, especially in the years that have just passed with pandemics and whatnot. But what are some of the challenges that you and your colleagues in the ministry see on a fairly regular basis, or what are the more profound ones that you don't see that often, but when you do, they really hit you?
well, I think the last 3 years have been particularly difficult for ministers and for all of us. I mean, these last 3, 4 years have been unlike any years that I've lived in my entire life. And so I think churches and ministers and lawyers and doctors and everyone has
Mhm.
just seen the same challenges over the last 3 or 4 years, and it absolutely has been a challenge. I'm afraid that there are a lot of people out there today who are depressed, and
Right.
sort of left in a place of semi-permanent or permanent depression. And I think we're seeing some of that with elevated suicide rates, and elevated cries for help, and people struggling with mental challenges. And so those are some of the challenges for me personally as a pastor. It's always difficult to me when folks leave one church and go to the other church, or leave the church where I serve. That's a kind of an emotional thing for me. And I know other
Yeah.
pastors who would say the same thing. Those kinds of things happen in life. I mean, people
Right.
move and people change churches and they move. It's a natural part of life, but it's difficult. It's challenging. And so those are some of the most challenging things that I face in ministry anyway.
Well, I appreciate your candor and thank you for sharing that. Speaking of challenges to your profession and to churches in general, um, I was really astounded to learn recently, I think through one of your sermons, that fewer than half the people or fewer than half the families in our parish are affiliated with church and go to church. And that just shocked me in a world where, I grew up as an altar boy heading down to mass every Sunday, sometimes Saturday too, depending on the schedule. My wife and her family, the Baptist side of our family, like you said earlier with you, the Wednesday night they're there, Sunday they're there twice a day, in that church pew. And that was just in every direction in my own family and with my in-laws. But to think that less than half the people around here are going to church, that was shocking to me. So is that your understanding of our local population? And if you could just tell us a little bit about that, what's the lay of the land out there for,
Sure.
Christianity in Tangipahoa Parish and particularly in Ponchatoula?
Sure. I think that's a pretty common figure in Louisiana and in South Louisiana and in other states as well. I
Mm-hmm.
was a little bit surprised to see the statistics showing a number quite that high in Tangipahoa Parish, as you were discussing. But I think it's just a reflection of modern life.
Right.
We are a blessed people in our country. We think that we struggle with finances and that we're not wealthy, but we're rich.
Right.
Honestly, we're rich. And so today, there's a whole lot more options for people to do things on Sunday today than there was when we were kids. I mean, when we were kids, we didn't go out of town every week.
Yeah.
We didn't go somewhere, every weekend and stay in a hotel and,
Yeah.
eat
No,
out.
I remember when
You know,
going to Hammond to the Holodome was a vacation.
it was a
You know?
big deal, man. I mean,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
so
you're
we
right.
have so many options. There's so much wealth. And, on top of that, everybody seems to work so hard today, Monday through Friday. By the time the weekend gets here, people are tired. They're just exhausted. And so they need time to rest. And I think that's part of it. And then I think quite frankly, church is just a habit.
Mm-hmm.
And we fall out of that habit, and it's hard when we fall out of that habit to get back into the habit.
Right.
When we do, I think we're blessed to get back into the habit. And so, yeah, the statistics are a little bit shocking. I think they're probably fairly accurate. When I saw those statistics, I just kind of thought about my street. And
Right.
I know the folks on my street, and I know for my street that statistic is pretty accurate. I think
Yeah.
probably less than half of us are in a church on any given Sunday. And you know what? That Parker, that's a great opportunity, because what I want to say to people is, I don't want to harangue people and make them feel guilty. Hey, you're not in church. I want to say to them, man, think about what you're missing. Think
Yeah.
about think about the things that you're missing by not being in church. And so we have a great opportunity looking forward in our community toward those folks who don't have a church home, or maybe are not active in church on a regular basis. And I think a lot of those folks, a lot of those 52%, they're not atheists. It's
Yeah.
not that
Right.
they don't believe in God. Most of them would say, yeah, I know, I ought to be in church. And so we need
Yeah.
to reach out to them and get them involved, find them a place.
What I like what you said about habits, and it's so easy to let that Sunday snooze button become a habit. I'm reading a book
Right.
right now by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and it's about his relationship with Coach Wooden. And it's
Hmm.
very interesting to me. I don't know much about Kareem other than, on the basketball court. I can
Right.
tell you how many MVPs he's got and how close LeBron James is to passing his record for most points. But I didn't know he went to Catholic school, but when he was Lou Alcindor. And, I'm at the part in the book where he's talking about his freshman year at UCLA. And that first Sunday, he literally got a call from the local, I guess it was the Catholic outreach. They basically said, hey, it's Sunday morning, mass starts at blank. But he was 3,000 miles away from his Catholic mom and his Christian parents. And he decided to hit the snooze. And he said he knew his mom wouldn't like that. He felt guilty about it, but he never went back to mass again. And now, of course, we know Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is Muslim. And so, you're right. So not everybody's going to a different faith like Kareem, or maybe, abandoning Christ, but that habit is really hard to get out of. So habits are a powerful thing both ways, good habits, bad habits. And
that's right.
Sometimes there are triggers that will bring you back kind of naturally. Having children would
absolutely
be one. But yeah, a lot of times it's just a matter of realizing I'm not in the healthiest trajectory right now. Let's get back on track. Like a lot of us can be with diet or exercise or any habit out there.
Oh, now let's move on now.
Yeah, let's get back to the topic. Well, tell me this before we get into specifically First Baptist Church of Ponchatoula and what you guys are doing to meet that need. Let's talk about how you're collaborating with the community, because as we alluded to earlier, I know that you're working with Father McDuffie and several other Protestant ministers in the area, in addition to yourself. So tell us a little bit about, this faith sharing program that you guys have going and what's coming up with that.
Well, I'm so excited about that. Father McDuffie spoke at our church the last time we had a faith sharing gathering. And he said that this for him was a dream come true. People of different faiths, people of different denominations coming together to worship together. And it really has been a dream of mine as well. I don't understand. We're all worshiping the same God.
Right.
We're all coming to him, through the same Jesus, the same mediator. And, we have a lot of enemies out there. And there's a powerful enemy that stands up against us. But our enemy is not each other. I mean, we're on the same team, and so it's always been a dream of mine that God's people unite and come together. And, Father McDuffie has some Baptist in his family. Don't tell anybody.
Boy, this is a scandal. Boy, you just dropped the bomb.
I have some Catholics in my family.
Uh-oh.
And so, I think the two of us, might be, ideally coming together to sort of make this happen in our community. Carl Coleman has joined with us. Eddie Robertson is with us. David Peavy is right in there with us. Mike Fulmer, and it's
great ministers and folks. Yeah.
Yeah. And Mike's got the Baptist background. He's Catholic now. He's a Baptist Catholic.
Right.
And that's okay.
I've seen him speak the fourth cup. He's got so much great things to share.
That's right. And so it really has been a dream come true. We have a great community. I hope everybody realizes that and knows that Ponchatoula is a great community, and it's great. It's a great place to raise families, and it's a place of faith. It's a place of belief. And so we've just come together and we hear stories of transformation. That's what we hear. And we worship together. And we meet at St. Joseph, and we meet at First Baptist. And on October 23rd, we're going to meet at First True Love on Range Road. Pastor Coleman and his church. That's at 5:45 on October 23rd. Our next one. And so these are just great times of fellowship. We all live together in the community. We're all at the same bank and the same stores, and we live in the same neighborhoods. Our kids go to the same schools, and we all know each other. Let's worship together some. Let's come together.
That's a great point. And what I've learned from being around for 45 years, and after 10 years in Catholic school to begin my life, and the last 10 years sitting in Baptist pews with my wife, there's a lot more that unites us than divides us.
That's right.
And they're great resources. I remember years ago when I was a young lawyer, probably close to 20 years ago, when I moved back to town, our friends, your neighbors right there on Pine Street at the Methodist Church, put on a great program. I think it was called Christianity's Family Tree. And they had, a book written by a Methodist minister, I believe, Reverend Hamilton. And it was great because it really highlighted the strengths of each. It wasn't this usual sniping of, well, you Catholics don't know your Bible that well, or you Baptists don't do communion often enough, or, all the things that we love to say. It was really, positive to say, hey, we could learn from the Baptists that we need to read our Bible more, and we can learn from the Catholics this or
Absolutely.
that. And
Absolutely.
rather than tearing, our face down, we really, can elevate it with inclusion. So I love to hear what you're doing there. So let's turn our focus to your church. I know, it's exciting times because you have this Emerge building program coming up. There's a lot of chatter around town, as we've seen, buildings go down, and people, but those of us that have been around a while with gray and the beard, remember buildings going up at your church. But tell us what's going on there with the Emerge building program at First Baptist Church.
Well, I serve a wonderful church, a wonderful church family. It's been here since 1901. Contrary to popular belief, I was not here in 1901. It's been here a long time, and I don't know that First Baptist Ponchatoula has ever had all of the room that it needed.
Right.
We have always had to have, right now we have 3 worship services, and some of that is because of pandemic issues, but we have 3 worship services and 2 Sunday schools. And it's because we don't have enough space. We don't have enough room. And I'm not sure that we ever have, in looking back at the history. And so, wonderful problem to have, great problem to have, but it's time for us to gather together and to build a facility for the next generation. We want to build a new facility primarily for those 18 and under. Your new church space usually goes to the nursery and the preschool and the children, and
Sure.
and because we always give our best to our children. We want them to have better than we did.
Yeah.
And so it is a building that's focused on the next generation, but it's a very multi-purpose building that we're planning to build. It's about 25,000 square feet.
Wow.
About 15,000 on the ground, a second floor that has 10,000 or so square feet. And so it's just needed space. It's space to help us be better in our mission and to be more effective and efficient in doing what we do as a church, which is, bringing people to the knowledge of the Lord. And so it is an exciting time, and it's been, lots of plans and lots of preliminaries leading up to this point. And so it's exciting.
Well, speaking of plans, one of your ministers, Josh Dixon, was kind enough to share this image with me. So I hope you can see that on your screen.
Yeah, absolutely.
This looks to me like kind of an overhead shot from Pine Street. So that would be Main Street right in front of the church. If you would just walk us through this. You just kind of describe the purpose of the building and what's going on. But, obviously the big building up front in the middle, we recognize it's there now.
Right.
So tell us about, what will be changed here. And of course you can't see in this image, but on the next block would be the Ponchatoula Junior High, right behind.
Yes, it's back behind that picture. And so the new building is behind our worship center, and you can see it there with the big brown roof in the back. It will be connected to our worship center. Churches used to kind of build buildings, build a building over there, build another building over there, build a building over there and back there, and they weren't connected. And so this building will be connected, and we're going and moving towards, having everything kind of under the same roof. And so it's a multi-purpose building connected to the back of our worship center. And you see to the left, you kind of see a drop-off drive-through, a covered drive-through.
I think I might even have an image of that. Let's see. That's still the front. I think. Oh, whoops! What did I do? Forgive me there. User error. We can plan for everything but that. Let's see here. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, there you go. That is an architectural.
Is that what you're talking about? The
rendering of the drive-through, and this will sort of be the central place where people drop their families off, and the place where we all enter, and thank God for that. It
really neat.
With 52 Sundays out of the year in South Louisiana, it's probably raining about 20 of them. We really don't have a drop off like that. We don't have a covered drop off, and so I knew if we were gonna have the church respond positively to this building plan, it's gonna have to have a covered drop off. So there it
Oh yeah,
is, and you
that's
see that
great.
one parking spot right there with that
Yeah,
one car in it. That's
is that
my
what
parking
I was
spot
gonna
right
say? I don't
there.
see a sign that says pastor yet, but I'm assuming that'll come
I
later.
told the architect when I saw that, I said, the first thing you're going to have to change on that artist rendering is to take that parking spot out, man. People will be getting up here at 5 o'clock in the morning trying to get that one
Right. Oh
parking
yeah.
spot right
I
there.
can see little old ladies parking there, at
Absolutely.
daybreak. I like how your architect put the image of the junior high off in the distance. I didn't notice
Yeah.
that till now,
Yeah,
but
there it is.
that's neat. Well, speaking of the junior high, let me ask you about another development at your church. It's my understanding that longtime local educator and former junior high principal Mary Beth Crevetto is now your interim children's minister, right?
She is our children's minister, and she hit the ground running. And when I discovered that possibility and
Uh-huh.
thought that it might be a possibility to bring her onto our team here, I sort of jumped at the chance. My wife had been filling in that
Yeah,
position
Miss Kathy's doing a great job. My kids love her.
while teaching full time, and
Yeah.
also doing the children's ministry. And so Mary Beth has been a great addition to our staff, and so she's learning, and it's a great new phase in her
Mhm.
life, and we're happy to have her, and she's happy to have us at the moment. Anyway,
Well,
she's
as a guy with
happy to
2
have us.
kids in that program, I'm really excited, especially because Mary Beth was my teacher once upon a time, and I know what an effective educator she is and just what a great person. Her
Right.
husband leads our Sunday school group. Her son worked
Yeah,
for me for 4 or 5 years, and it's just a great family, so it's really exciting development for the church.
it
Well,
is.
tell me this, what else would you like to share with our viewers? What else would you like to share?
Well, we're just so excited to be at this point in the life of our church where we can, do some things to be able to better serve our community. We have a wonderful community that is growing. Our community is growing. I'm amazed at the growth, and I kind of recognize all of this because I grew up in Slidell. And when I grew up in Slidell back in the day, Gauze Boulevard was, gravel road, and so I kind of saw Slidell go through this growth and this
Yeah, you're kind of been
expansion.
there, done that.
Been there and done that, and man, I see some things that I remember.
Yeah.
I see some things that I definitely remember from my childhood, and so we're growing, and that's exciting. All kinds of opportunities are headed down the road for our community, and First Baptist wants to be right in the middle of that. And there's some challenges that come with that growth, but we want to be right in the middle of it. I discovered in doing my research for this building campaign too that the average age of Tangipahoa Parish is 35,
Wow, that
and
seems young. That's really young.
it is very young.
Wow.
We're younger with that average age. We're younger than St. Tammany Parish, and we're younger than Livingston Parish, and
How
so
about that?
that's kind of a distinctive for us. And of
Yeah.
course, when you have an average age of 35, you got folks that are marrying and they're having kids, and that's another
Yeah.
reason we're focused on the next generation. I say 35-year-olds are nesting birds. They're having kids,
Well,
and
speaking of that, and I don't want to put you on the spot for stats you may or may not know, but your wife's an educator. You've done this research. How big are our local schools now? Do you know how many per grade? What are we
well,
looking at
I
now?
I I say that we have about 400 kids per grade, or we're approaching
Wow.
400 kids per grade in
Wow.
Ponchatoula now.
Yeah.
From what I understand, that doesn't count. Champ Cooper that
Right.
joins our kids when they get to high school. So at PHS at the high school, it's more than 400 kids per grade,
Yeah.
and
You're right because my wife just took a job at the junior high. And I think she told me they have about 800 students there.
right,
And you're right. They, of course, every one of them filters into PHS, but
right,
we've got the kids coming out of Champ Cooper, and then other kids bus from other parts of the parish
right.
to get here. So we're probably got more coming in than going out to hit PHS. So wow, yeah, we're growing fast. I think we all can sense a growth when we look out the window and see traffic, or when we try to get home and it takes us longer. But man, when you put numbers on it like that, 400, kids a grade, plus. That's really scary. Well, Pastor,
It's a little scary and great.
oh, it's great. You're right. It's great.
Yeah.
I want to thank you. I know you're a busy man. I know you have a lot of important work to do, and you were kind enough to come back on the show. You're our first returning guest. I think I mentioned earlier, Sparky Wells did a 2-part episode, but I'm not going to count that because we had decided he'd come back the next week before he left the first time. But you're a perfect person to have here for the first time twice. I want to share one quote as we conclude. Miss Donna Hayden. Hey, Miss Donna. Hope, speaking of the junior high, your daughter's doing a phenomenal job. Great family there, the Haydens. I went to school with your son, Wes. Great
Awesome.
guy. But she says congratulations and blessings to everybody at First Baptist Church of Ponchatoula. And you're right, Miss Donna. The rendering does look awesome. So, Dr. Cranford, thank you once again, Pastor, for being on the show. To Miss Donna and everybody else who watched, we sure appreciate y'all being here. And we'll be back again next week. Y'all have a good weekend. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.